NHL fans, the wait is over. The National Hockey League gets underway on Tuesday, October 11th, and last season, 8 Wager Talk handicappers went over 50 units in the NHL. To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering a 7-day NHL package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 9th. Don't worry, NBA fans, we'll be running the same special for you next week.
What's going on, guys? Andrew McInnis here, wagertalk.com. You are watching Puck Time right here on Wager Talk TV. I am joined today by Bryan Leonard. Carmine has the day off as he is currently, I believe, in the air flying to Vegas to visit Bryan and do a couple more things. I think he's picking up a fat check from a football contest, but the show must go on. We've got 4 games we're breaking down today. Yesterday, we kind of eased into it with 2 games and 2 pretty exciting games. If you ask me, I'll get Bryan's thoughts on those contests. But today's games we will discuss. We have the Bruins and Capitals, Blue Jackets, Hurricanes, Maple Leafs, Canadiens, and the nightcap with the Canucks and the Oilers going head-to-head. Before we jumpstart with this show, I just want to remind you guys once again of that great deal we have going over at Wager Talk. 7 days of NHL plays for $7 a day at $49. Make sure you take advantage of it. You know, one play goes for $25. You can get one guy, $49 for an entire week. And I get it. If you guys don't want to buy a full year pass just quite yet, you want to dip your toes in the water, you can grab Bryan Leonard. You can grab myself. You can grab Carm, Prez, anybody over at wagertalk.com that handicaps hockey. 7 days, $49. It is a great deal. And for all of you NBA fans, they will have that same deal going for the NBA season just next week. But Bryan, I want to bring you in. The NHL season is here. Happy to have you back with us, of course. And what a way to start off the season, last night. I mean, of course, they did have the games over in Prague last Friday and Saturday, but we're all pretty much calling yesterday the start of the season. We'll call it the opening night. But Rangers and Tampa, just an unbelievable goaltending display. And then with the Vegas and LA game, I had the over as a best bet on the show, and I never really gave up on it just because there were so many chances all throughout the game, and then the third period just exploded with goals. But I'll tell you, that team that you follow, Golden Knights, wow, there's a lot of talent out there for that team.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I had the Knights in the first period on the show here and for clients, and didn't quite get there, spent too much time on defense in that first period. But as the game went on, you saw what Vegas was trying to do, pushing those forwards out a little bit to play tougher defense on the defensive side, and it really worked well. They had 51 shots on goal last night, and I loved the way they played. That game was a clear over, even though you had to wait late to get it. But I was very impressed by the way Vegas played, even though I didn't cash my own bet on that. It's something we can use in the future that I think is going to be very telling. This is a team that, we talked about it. There'll be a lot of goals in that game. I think you and Carmine both were on that side. And it's a situation for myself where I really love that game. And in fact, if you take a look at the expected goals in the first game, they were very high. New York put on a lot of pressure. It was just 2 outstanding goaltenders kept that one from going over. So just keep in mind that when they play other goaltenders or other teams that don't have as good a goaltending, those 2 teams, especially the Rangers, were very impressive offensively.
Yeah, Mika Zibanejad with 2 goals, a power play goal for him and a penalty kill goal, shorthanded, pretty impressive there from him. And Igor Shesterkin, he picked up right where he left off. And I just wanted to say real quick, as far as the Golden Knights go, I tweeted yesterday that I won't be, getting involved with prop plays in the NHL for at least a couple weeks with clients or here on Puck Time. But I'll tell you what, the Vegas Golden Knights, as far as their shots on goal props, they're going to be worth a look. Whether it's Marchessault, whether it's Eichel, Mark Stone. I mean, these top guys, they shoot the puck a lot, and they're not scared to fire away. I really am going to be cognizant of that and really aware of it. I mean, yesterday, Bryan, I think for the New York Rangers too, Jacob Trouba had like 8 shots. I think his over-under was 2.5 plus money. Mika Zibanejad, same thing with him. I think he cashed his shot prop in the first period. So it's really interesting. And, you look at a goalie like Jonathan Quick. He looked like he was, in his prime, back when they won the cup. He faced a lot of shots. So all of these things can be taken into account. And we always talk about, I always talk about it with mid-major Matt Josephs and Andy Lang. These bets all cash the same. You're going to dinner and you're paying for a dinner because of the bets that you cashed. Nobody cares if it was a side or a total or a first period or a prop. It's just money. And, some of these plays we look at, especially with teams like the Golden Knights that fire so many shots on net, I think you can make some money with some shot props with some of those guys. But let's start this show off. Let's get things going with our very first game here with the Bruins and the Capitals. Look, the Bruins are a team that I haven't really had much good to say about recently. They're plus 125 here on the road. We got Washington minus 145. Total is at 6, shaded to the over. Worth mentioning that in the offseason, we did see kind of some 5.5s at some books, and it slowly started to move to 6 here with these clubs. And obviously the big storyline here in this game, the fact of the matter is the Boston Bruins are missing several key guys in their lineup, including Brad Marchand, including Charlie McAvoy, including Matt Grzelcyk. And you really got to ask yourself, in my opinion, does that justify Washington being minus 145? And the way I look at it, Bryan, is I'm not so sure it really does. But I'll tell you what, missing McAvoy and Grzelcyk tells me we might see some goals in this game tonight. I look towards the over 6 here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, both teams dealing with injuries to start the season here. I wanted to play Washington, and when the line came out, it was a fair line. Unfortunately, it got hit up pretty quick there, so that took me out of price range to play on Washington. The Capitals are coming off a 19-win season at home. That's not normal for the Capitals in that regard. So I think they're going to have a little bit more excitement to play at home for the home fans this year. I think they get it. Maybe the Washington points over would be a look in this game because Boston has that coaching change. You don't know what you're going to get out of them at this point. They're trying to do something a little bit different. So maybe Washington, since I've lost it on the line in the game, maybe team total over for Washington. I'll check that out a little bit later. But that's the way I'm looking here. Both teams dealing with injuries, as I mentioned. And Washington should come out really strong at home to start the season.
Right now you can get Washington over 3.5 team total at plus 110 over at DraftKings. So, turning a minus price of 140, 150 into a plus 110 is pretty solid there. And do you agree with me that, I don't like to always react big time to off-season moves or injuries, but Boston was just, to me, there's such a team that relied on a couple of guys a lot. How many minutes McAvoy played last year, and then you look at Brad Marchand missing, I think it's 2 or 3 months for them. Do you agree that they're just a complete different team until those guys get back? Because I talked to some Bruins guys, talked to a guy that writes for the Bruins, and everyone's just kind of thinking that it's going to be hard for this team to make up and fill those gaps.
Yeah, I've read a lot of different people's views on the NHL this year, and that's one of the concerns they have. They thought Boston wasn't as good last year. They may be down the downside. Their best players are starting to age. They got rid of the coach. Sometimes you get rid of the coach to shake things up. Obviously, Vegas did the same thing. Not saying that the coach wasn't any good anymore. It's just sometimes what he is preaching just goes over their heads. So it's just for a change. So hopefully Boston's thinking that way too. And I think that's why they made the change. So we'll have to see. Haven't seen him play as of yet, obviously, this being opening night for him. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I do have some concerns about them this year. It's a team I'm hoping to play on later this season and think we may get some value. But as of right now, I'm going to wait and see situation with the Boston Bruins.
Definitely a game I'll have my eye on tonight. That's for sure. Of course, one game I'll have my eye on. We'll touch on that one in a little while here. But our next game we'll break down. Let's talk about the Blue Jackets and the Hurricanes. I think this is a game that is kind of going to go under the radar tonight. I mean, Carolina, they're minus 270. Columbus plus 230 underdogs here. The minus 1.5 and plus 1.5. It's a pick each way. Total sits at 6.5 now, shaded towards the under. I first thought, was surprised to see this move to a 6.5 as we see some sixes around a little bit here. But, some changes in the offseason for both teams. And I guess the biggest story for Columbus, picking up Johnny Gaudreau from the Calgary Flames. And Carolina, they just continue to add. They add Pacioretty. Of course, he's injured now, but they add Brent Burns on the blue line. Lots of good things to talk about for both these clubs. A big thing for Carolina is getting Freddie Anderson back, getting him healthy. But, Brian, I don't know if I think that Carolina should be minus 270 here. Carolina's been a team that I've liked quite a bit. They're great defensively. I think they led the year, the entire NHL last year in goals against, or if it wasn't goals against, I think it was shots allowed. But they're a good defensive club. I really like them. And I was riding them in the playoffs, but I don't know if they can really justify minus 270 here. This is a Columbus team that's improved every year over the past few years here. I think they might be able to hang around. What about you?
I'm looking at it a little bit different, and it's nice to see that we're only on our second game. We're going a little bit head-to-head here. First of all, Elvis has left the building. The starting goaltender for Columbus is sick. He will not be playing tonight. Tarasov will be in goal. I don't think it's a major differential. I think they were both quality goaltenders, but that's something to keep in mind, and maybe one of the reasons why the line is a little bit higher than what you thought. The Blue Jackets made a lot of noise in the offseason. I like the signings. I think they're going to be a better team. I wasn't overly impressed with them last year, so being from Cleveland, I kind of follow the Blue Jackets a little bit since Cleveland doesn't have an NHL team. But this is a team in the Blue Jackets. They are going to be better. I don't think they're there yet. Carolina is a team that I really like this season. The Hurricanes dominate this series, and the price, while expensive, I think isn't prohibitive. You take a look at what happened last year. Hurricanes won 29 games at home. Columbus only won 16 on the road. Based on Carolina's history against Columbus here in Carolina, a team that I'm looking to play on early, even though the backup goaltender's in there, it's not a big deal. I like Carolina here. I think the line is fair. It is a little bit expensive, no doubt about it. When you have these teams coming into the season that everybody wants to bet on, your Torontos, your Colorados, obviously, your Carolinas, Floridas, they're going to be expensive because all offseason people talked about how good these teams were. So you're going to have to lay a little bit, but I have no problem laying it here with Carolina. Columbus is a team that I think, at least in my mind, is a little overrated based on what they brought in. I'll watch them. I'll see what happens. But as of right now, Carolina is a team I'm looking to play on, and I think it's a fair line.
I can definitely agree with you that they're a little bit over talked about right now. I'm not saying that these two teams are a fair comparison, but they kind of remind me of the Ottawa Senators of the offseason. Everybody can't stop talking about the Senators, but they're also in a really tough division, Yeah. They're not going to be a sleeper. They're not going to be, a vastly improved team, but they're going to be more competitive with their opponents. I really like Carolina. Something tells me that, Columbus is going to put forward a tight effort. I don't know if they're going to win the game, but, I'm never, ever really a plus 1.5 better, Brian, because, I usually try and capitalize the other way with the empty net goals. So if I bet plus 1.5, I'll be scared the whole game to lose to an empty net goal. But if there was ever a game for me to look at that, it might be this one here, but should be a good game nonetheless there, and lots of great young guys on both teams, as well as leadership as well. So good game there. Brian looking towards Carolina, saying, hey, maybe Columbus improved, but not as much as everyone's thinking they did. Let's talk about my beloved Montreal Canadiens. They came dead last year in the NHL, 32nd place in the entire league. They are plus 220, opening up their season at home against the Maple Leafs like they do every single season. They are, again, plus 220. We have Toronto minus 260, and we have the total at 6.5. There are 7s out there, so make sure you shop around if you do want to get that better number, if you're willing to eat a little bit of that juice there. Look, when I look at this game, first and foremost, I want to say that I take a look at both rosters. We know what the experience is. We know what, the expectation for both these teams are. We've heard that everyone thinks Montreal is going to be tanking. To me, I'm just more concerned about Montreal's defense than anything. I follow this team very closely, and I actually don't make that many wagers on them. Cashed some good over tickets last year when they were allowing a bunch of goals, Bryan, that's for sure. But, with this Montreal team, one thing I want to note before I throw it over to you is that they didn't really show their cards at all in the preseason. I watched pretty much all their preseason games. They didn't once have their regular opening night lineup. It's one thing I kind of find cool, that they just didn't really want to show their cards. And, they had a different pairing every night. They had different defensive pairings, different forward groups. They didn't once show their entire, 4 lines and regular defensemen out there, which I thought was kind of interesting. But Toronto at minus 260 with a pretty deep team, of course, with Matthews that seems to have an unbelievable night every night of the week. It's hard not to look at the Maple Leafs on the puck line here. But, at home, I kind of look towards the Montreal Canadiens team total over 2.5 goals. That was my thought initially when I saw this game. I thought it was a pretty good price. And especially with it being opening night, the excitement's in the air. They're at home, and they have a lot of good forwards like Kirby Dach, Sean Monahan, that are going to want to make an impression right away. So, what are your thoughts here on this Maple Leafs team? Because they continue to disappoint their fan group, in the first round of the playoffs every year, but they're dominating in the regular season. They've got a lot of depth. I would argue that they might not have as much depth as last season, though, because of their cap issues. What are your thoughts here in this game, Bryan?
Yeah, it's a situation for me where you mentioned the Montreal side of it. That you talked about what they played in the preseason. A lot of teams do that. Vegas had guys that didn't play together, and they didn't play very often. I think it's a long season, so I wouldn't read too much into that. I do want to make a note. You talked about in the last game about wanting to lay the 1.5 as opposed to taking the plus 1.5. Those that have watched the show the last couple of years know how I feel about that. But anybody who is new, my feelings on hockey, you got games in which you're going to score 6 goals. Every single goal is extremely important. And you ask a team when they go out to play, what's your goal tonight? Win the game by 1. Win the game. That's all it takes. Win by 1. So I am one of those that will take the plus 1.5. I rarely ever lay the minus 1.5 just because the teams just want to win the game, and that's what it comes down to. I don't like the luck factor. That's the worst. My least favorite part of hockey is when you pull the goaltender at the end of the game, and then that turns into a luck factor. But it's a situation for me where I prefer to lay a little bit more on the chalk just to have the team win than lay the 1.5. And I know you and Carmine are just the opposite. It's not saying one way is right, one way is wrong. It's just the way you have to take a look at it, especially when you could play first period, second period, team totals, that kind of thing. So different ways to get to what you want to do. And you talked about the Montreal side here. I was looking at it. It's somewhat the same thing, but a little bit opposite. I want to play the Maple Leafs here, but the line's a little bit too steep, especially considering the history between these two teams. There have been a lot of close games over the years. These teams know each other very well. So I don't want to lay that kind of number with Toronto. And you mentioned Montreal. I do have concerns about the goaltending in the back line for Montreal here. So I was looking at the same thing as you were, slightly different, and that's the Toronto team total over. I saw an over 4. It's early in the morning. It's so not everybody's in with these, but I saw a team total over 4.5 at plus 135. I would much rather play the plus 135 on Toronto tonight over 4.5 than I would to lay the $3 or whatever they're at this point. So different ways to get around it. I think you're looking at the same thing I am, and with yours and mine combined, maybe a good look at the over in the game would probably be the way to go in this one also.
Yeah, definitely. from the sounds of it, let's just hope for goals in general and cash a ticket together. I got to ask you. I know that you'd say you're more of a side player than totals, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts here on when you see like a minus 125 or 130 on a 6.5 versus getting a 7, or a 5.5 versus getting a 6? Because for me, the way I always look at it with clients is if I'm having a more low volume approach, then I'm willing to take the juice with the minus 125 or whatever for a total. If I'm playing a bunch of them all at once and in one night or in 1 week, then I want to manage the bankroll, and I'll take the 6 minus 110 versus the minus 130 and stuff like that. What are your thoughts when you look at this? Because in particular situation, I actually would look towards the 7, because I saw like some plays had like plus 110 or something like that for this game as far as the total goes. So instead of laying like minus 130 and shopping to every book you can to try and get that best number, if you lose, you're losing the 1.3 units. If you take the 7, you're just losing 1 if it falls short. What are your thoughts as far as that goes with totals?
I think a lot of it depends on how you think the game is going to play out. If you've got a pick'em game, I think there's more chances of it going over for a higher number, because you see a lot of back and forth. We saw that last night in the Golden Knights game. One team would take a 1-goal lead, then the other team would get the puck and put it in the goal. If you follow penalties a lot, most of the time the refs, I don't know if they're doing it consciously or not, but if one team gets a couple calls in a row, the other team tends to get the next penalty call. So it keeps the game more even, at least through the first 2 periods, in which one team gets the lead, the other team has a little bit better of a chance to come back. So if it's a blowout situation, and for example, in this game, Toronto's expected to win, Montreal, even though they played well against them, knows, the players know that they're not going to have a very good season. If they fall down 3-1 early, I doubt they pull the goalie. They'll probably just play it out. And you have to take a look at also what they have going on the next day, if they're going to play the next day, if their schedule playing 4 games in 5 days, 6 days, something like that. So you just have to kind of look ahead. Is it worth pulling the goalie here to be able to come back, or are they just going to play it out and see what happens and then be set for the next day? But yeah, it's different ways to look at it. As I said, I'm not a totals guy. You and Carmine know more about that than I do, and I don't have the numbers, unfortunately, to tell you which way to go. But if with the success that you have had over the years, especially last year, whatever you're doing, keep it up, man.
Well, thanks, Brian. I was just trying, learn from you guys. I mean, you guys have been doing it a lot longer than me, and I respect your opinion always. So just trying to manage the bankroll and do it the best way I can. Just before we wrap things up with this game, I did want to mention, I kind of forgot to talk about the fact that there's several rookies out there for the Canadiens, and Uri Slafkovsky, the number 1 overall pick. There's been a lot of debate for him about, how long he'll spend up with the Canadiens before he goes down to the minor leagues. For me, everyone reacts differently, but I don't think people realize how hard it is for these European players to adjust to the North American game. The ice is way bigger. The rinks are way bigger in Europe and their leagues. In Toronto, Montreal, these arenas, you have a lot less space, a lot less time along the boards. It's hard to adjust for that kind of stuff. And on the blue line as well, starting with Caden Gooley, Arbor, that guy, there's several guys that are playing their first ever NHL games tonight. And, well, if you're a rookie and you're a defenseman and you're playing Austin Matthews, good luck. Good luck to you, because he's going to make you pay. But it should be a good game, and both Brian and I expecting some goals here in this one. And I love the approach there with the team total on the Leafs to avoid laying that big price. But let's jump into our last contest here in the West Coast here of Canada. Edmonton minus 195, Vancouver plus 165. Total in this one, 6.5. And Edmonton, what a year they had last year, Brian. They really made a big push. McDavid, Draisaitl, Evander Kane had a big year. Vancouver, though, they battled lots of injuries. They had COVID issues. they probably didn't meet their expectations, and I think that this year they're going to be kind of on that revenge tour, but starting their year off against a team like Edmonton it could be quite difficult. What are your thoughts here in this game?
Yeah, you mentioned Vancouver. Wearing my Vancouver jersey that one of our listeners sent me last year. So, unfortunately, I won't be on Vancouver in this game. But it's a team that I think is coming off a year that basically was a wasted year. You talked about the COVID situation, the injuries. That's all in the back burner. I don't know if we learned anything about the way they played last year. But this is a team since the coaching change last year. They were much better team. They normally, when a team starts a season like Vancouver does, especially having a lot of veterans on that team, you want to play against them as the season went on. This is a team that played better at the end of the season, much better than they did earlier, and they made some changes. I think they're a team that I'm looking to play on this year. Unfortunately, not right now because they do have some concerns defensively, and this Edmonton team, if you're having problems defensively coming into the season, the last thing you want to do is play this Edmonton team very similar to Toronto. Not something you want to do. This Edmonton team is loaded, and they got the playoff monkey off their back from last year. So these two teams, Toronto and Edmonton, have been very similar to me the last few years, where they could score a lot, but they just don't make any playoff runs. Edmonton did well in the playoffs last year. They made a believer out of a lot of people. I think that continues here. You can't go on having two of the best players in hockey and not have success unless you've got no depth whatsoever. I think they're a better team. You mentioned who they brought in. It's a situation for me where Edmonton's a team that is expected to do very well this year, and I like them. They've got strong home ice. It's the team right now in Edmonton. Sure, you're laying a little bit in this game, but I like Edmonton. I laid it with Edmonton.
Great stuff there, Bryan Leonard. WagerTalk.com, number one in NHL last 5 years. That's a big accomplishment. Look, I was happy about one good season, Bryan. You're number one last 5 years. That's pretty exciting. So, guys, check out Bryan. Once again, 7 days NHL, $49. If you're not interested in a month or a year yet, dip your toes in the water. Grab 7 days of NHL action for $7 a day. That applies to every single NHL handicapper over at the website. And as far as the Vancouver-Edmonton game goes, it's hard to disagree with Bryan's thoughts on that one. I mean, I like the monkey off your back analogy there because it's true. Edmonton and they shocked some people. They really surprised some people the way they got over that hump. And, I think that you look at the goaltending situation and what happened with the Maple Leafs and their cap space, the fact that Edmonton were able to just slide in and scoop up Jack Campbell, he's going to be great for them. I think Jack Campbell's a great goaltender, and let's be honest here, he's a little bit of an upgrade from Mike Smith. So, that's going to be an interesting story to follow to see how much he changes that team and what he is able to do. I mean, Mike Smith had his moments, but between him and Koskinen, how many hiccups they had every couple of games, I think Jack Campbell could be a big addition for them. So, having said that, with all of these great, players on both clubs, I think this year the key to success for the Vancouver Canucks is low-scoring games. They don't want to get in track meets, right? They've got Brock Besser, they have JT Miller, they have Pettersson, but I just don't think they're a team that can play the style that Edmonton's going to want them to play. So I actually do have a small lean to the under 6.5. I think Edmonton comes out on top, but I think that Vancouver does everything they can to try and keep this game low scoring. And there still is a pretty good decor on both sides of the ice there, but we'll see what happens. But I'm expecting kind of a defensive battle here, as long as the power plays don't get in the way, because as Bryan mentioned, both these clubs, Edmonton and Vancouver, lots of talent out there, but especially Edmonton, they will make you pay on the power play. For me, I'm probably going to be playing a lot of totals out the gate, guys. I really I have a better read on these totals than I do on sides before I've seen them play a couple times. Once I have a kind of a 3-4 game sample size, I'll start firing more on situational plays and travel spots and all that good stuff. But for me right now, I just going to have a better read on these totals, and speaking of which, last night, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that the best bet was an easy winner by any means. I mean, 1-1 in the Golden Knights and Kings game going into the third period. There were chances all game, but hitting that best bet felt pretty good. I believe we had a 3-0 night on the best bets yesterday, and it was just a 2-game slate. So we'll try and pick things up where we left off yesterday and jump into best bets. But Bryan, it's a busy time in the sports world right now, in the sports betting world. Of course, we have NFL, college football, baseball going on. And yeah, the NHL is here, and you know I'm here for it. But what do you have going on at Wager Talk for this week?
Yeah, I just want to touch on, just listening to you as you speak, and I'm always trying to learn just like you are. If you do think this game's going under, is that correlated to Vancouver side? I would think it would be.
I think it would be. I don't trust them enough to be able to pull it out, but I think that they're, Oilers are going to be involved in lots of high scoring games, but when I look at, I think they improved their goaltender, and even the Oilers know themselves, even though they had success last year and actually made it pretty deep in the playoffs, I don't think they want to, have to win games by scoring 6 goals, 5 goals every night either. You compare the Leafs to the Oilers, and everybody knows I kind of get my jabs in on the Leafs, and I'm kind of a Leafs hater. But let's be honest, one thing that's wrong with that team is that every year they have to score 4 or 5 goals to win a game, right? And I think the Oilers want to get rid of that mindset. They would be happy if they could win a game 3-1, and not have to have McDavid or Draisaitl score 2 goals in a game. So I would agree it correlates with Vancouver, but I couldn't get there with them tonight. So I'll just stick with the total. I think Edmonton probably is the side, but we'll see if Vancouver can keep it close. And as you mentioned, it's hard for us to handicap penalties. You can't handicap power plays, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that will absolutely kill an under in this league, is if you give a team too many chances on special teams. But what's going on for you at Wager Talk? What are your clients getting this week? What do you have up for free plays and all that good stuff?
Yeah, right now up on the site, I've got my top 2 NHL plays going on tonight's card, obviously. Baseball, I'm still going back and forth. Nice 3-1 start to the baseball playoffs. Had the Yankees yesterday, unfortunately, as a Cleveland fan, but didn't like the pitching matchup yesterday. I have no problem going against my local teams if I think there's value. And 3-1 in the playoffs. The only loss, I think I had the Padres in an earlier series as an underdog, but still looking at the baseball card, 2 NHL up. I've got 2 plays up in college football, including a 4% play, and I'm number 1 on the season, or actually number 1 on the year 2022 at 4% profits on the site. So looking forward to that. Still reading a lot on the football, getting ready for basketball. NBA's right around the corner, and in college basketball is about to start. So busy time of year for all of us. And you mentioned Leaf haters. You know who else is Leaf haters? Landscapers.
You've been waiting on that one, haven't you?
I was waiting for the spot.
That one's been in the back pocket there. I like that one. I want to see Carm's reaction. You got to use that again next week. Do me a favor.
There you go.
I'll pretend I didn't hear it already. We'll have to see Carm's reaction for that one. I like it. For me as well, baseball action. It's been kind of a rough go. This year, Bryan, for me, it was just, I felt like I was splitting out every day. And the juice adds up, right? If you're splitting out and going one-on-one, all of a sudden you're losing the juice. And it was nice. I had Mets team total over, which kind of came down to the wire. That was nice to hit. I was with you on the Yankees, and I had the over in the late game on the Dodgers. So I was really, really happy, and it was a much-needed good MLB night. But it's not hard to win in postseason baseball. It's very difficult. There's sharp lines, and it's tough to handicap, but fun to watch. That's for sure. It's exciting baseball to look into. So Bryan, getting into best bets here, obviously a bigger slate today than we had yesterday in the NHL with just 2 games. What are you going for here? I think we're undefeated to start the year off. No pressure or anything, but the Puck Time crew, we're undefeated so far. What do you have for us?
All right, we'll go over a game that we talked about earlier. I do want to make a point that Seattle, I think we can make a lot of money on Seattle. I didn't play them tonight, but that's a team that is much deeper this year than they've been in the past. And a lot of people will look at what they did last year. That's a team I'm looking to make some money on as we go. But I'll go back to this Columbus-Carolina line. And I said I like Carolina in this game, but on the site or on this show, I'm going to take the Carolina team total over 3.5 at -145. I think they'll have a lot of success here offensively, playing at home here. Backup goaltender, but I said I'm not too concerned about that. But we're getting the price down to 145 in a game where they score 4 goals. I like that. I think it's a nice play. One different way to play the Carolina game if you don't like to lay that big number.
Gotta love those team totals. Brian, looking at Carolina team total over 3.5, and you're right, you get a way better price on it. And let's be honest, if they're going to win that game, a good chance they're going to put up 4 goals, like that spot there with Carolina. My $2 Tuesday play from yesterday, guys, that's still for today. So we had the play up yesterday for $2 Tuesday. However, there were only 2 games to choose from, so I opted to go with a game from tonight's slate. So you can still grab that play at wagertalk.com for $2. And again, that price for every single NHL handicapper, 7 days for $49 works out to $7 a day. Check it out right now. Limited time only over at WagerTalk. Guys, my best bet, we're going to go to Boston and Washington up and over 6 goals. Okay, we've got Marchand. He's out. And everyone's talking about some injuries, and we talk about the Capitals and what's going on with them. But I'm more concerned about the defensive play from both these clubs. You know, I really don't think they're going to be able to keep up with the talented forwards that Washington and Boston are going to be throwing at each other. I really don't think it's going to be something they can do, especially early in the season. And if there's a little bit of older guys on both teams, maybe early in the season is the best time you want to take overs with them before they start kind of fading out later in the year. You know, with McAvoy out, with Grzelcyk out, I feel like that's going to be real rough for the Bruins. They're going to give up a lot more goals this year. And the Capitals, what we saw what happened last year with them in the playoffs, relying heavily on their goaltender to make some big saves to bail them out of a lot of situations. But I expect both these teams to be over teams this year. We're going to start the year off with over 6 here with Bruins Capitals as far as this slate goes. Brian, looking at Carolina and their team total over. You got to love that one against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Brian is back with me tomorrow once again on Wager Talk TV here on Puck Time. And to recap, Brian has Carolina over 3.5, and I have Boston, Washington over 6 goals. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, NHL fans, the wait is over. The National Hockey League gets underway on Tuesday, October 11th, and last season, 8 Wager Talk handicappers went over 50 units in the NHL. To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering a 7-day NHL package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 9th. Don't worry, NBA fans, we'll be running the same special for you next week.